Steeler Fury. SteelerPerch.com.
And we are live, or what passes for it these days. You are listening to the Pittsburgh Steelers show on the SteelerPerch.com podcast. I'm your host, Bradshaw DeBen, also known as Wil Masisak, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter. And with me, my two cohorts, who have been my two cohorts for a long time on this show. They have pretty much seen it all and here to talk about it. First of all, he got his 7 fishes last week in time for the big Christmas celebration somewhere in Pittsburgh, suburban zone 22 or thereabouts. His name is SteelerPerch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Well, I don't ever speak in definites or guarantees, but this very possibly could be my final home podcast.
Yeah, well, the signs are leaning that way anyway. Also with us in the great state of South Carolina, who emerged victorious today, even though they were 13-point underdogs to the North Carolina Tar Heels, playing a virtual home game. His name is Dom. He goes by FC. He's with us. I hope you had money on the Gamecocks. And how are you, sir?
I did, and I had money on South Carolina's running game, and, well, Brandon Lloyd proved me right, so I'm doing pretty well in that aspect.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise for a team that doesn't run all that well. But, yeah, to follow Perch's theory, it looked a lot like North Carolina really didn't care too much about their bowl game. Nobody except for Sam Howell, for some reason, who cared.
You know what? I didn't notice it, but bowl games really suck. I mean, I guess we'll tomorrow with the two big boys, but they just so it's not what it used to be. And I'm not trying to sound like a curmudgeon here, but I remember when like bowl games were like a big deal, and New Year's Day bowl games big deal, and not no more.
No, Music City Bowl is the only one so far that's really been kind of awesome. But
right, I mean, but there's been some decent games. Tennessee and Purdue.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that was a winner. Very fun. But yeah, the rest of it has been ultra forgettable. So especially with the Stars opting out, I mean, that makes it, for someone like me, it's like, well, I like to see it just because I like to see maybe a last look at one of the college prospects that, I'm interested in for the draft. And those guys are now kind of not playing for the most part. So yeah, that takes a big bite out of what's exciting about it. I guess the best thing now is maybe you see a young player you haven't seen before start to get some reps, and you're like, oh, all right, well, that's someone interesting for the future. But yeah, it's unless you're a fan of the team, not the most exciting, I guess. Anyway, the Pittsburgh Steelers this week have a football game that might be signs are pointing towards. It might be the last chance for Ben Roethlisberger to play a football game at Heinz Field. Hard for me to say those words, but that's kind of what it appears like. Perch, I'm not even sure it's worth talking about the Chiefs game and the fiasco that is the current Pittsburgh Steelers season. But weirdly enough, their chances of making a playoff outside of them aren't really that ridiculous. And it's really just about them. If they sort of flip a switch somehow and manage to win these last two games against Cleveland and Baltimore, they have a pretty good chance, I think, to make the playoffs. What do you? I don't know. What are you feeling about this team? About Ben's last game? About Monday Night Football? Are you just sort of like happy that you get a couple more games of Ben, or you have aspirations for more than that?
I just hope to God that the team and the organization doesn't do him a disservice the way that they have this entire year in these last couple of games. You remember how broken up Ben was after his rookie year, that he wasn't able to get Bettis to the championship, and promised him he'd come back the next year and would do that for him. Where are all the guys in the locker room fighting for Ben right now? The guy, he's been there for 18 years, given everything he's got, never had a losing season, taken him to 3 Super Bowls, everything he's meant to the organization. And maybe it's just the character, the people they have, but like the whole season, these guys should have been fighting for him. I know most of the offensive line is brand new and hasn't been there. Maybe that's part of it. And a lot of the skill position guys are first, second, third year guys, and they don't have that sort of history built up. But you just got to hope that the team actually comes out to play, that Tomlin is the best version of Tomlin and has a good game plan, and the defense holds up and all that. So you definitely, worst case, you'd like to see Ben win his final game on Monday Night Football in front of a national stage. You'd like to see the team in him win his final game ever at Heinz Field. And even if they lost the next week, or even if they won the next week and didn't make the playoffs, I think that, to me, this is the biggest thing they could do for the rest of the year for him is, man, they've got to go all out in this game. This is kind of, his last hurrah. It summed up into one game. And to me, that's what the story is. How does the team and the organization respond to that? And if people aren't willing to fight and throw down for Ben in this game, then the organization needs to make some hard choices and gut the roster if that's the case.
I mean, FC, I agree with Perch. Where is the support? Like, yes, I understand the head coach of this team and the ownership play things fairly close to the vest when it comes to the media. But, even Tomlin's praise for Ben has been rather subdued. And it just kind of feels like, someone ought to be standing up and saying, man, this guy has given his all for us, and we owe it to him to give, him the best send-off we can possibly give him this season, blah, blah, blah. But they don't really seem, it sort of feels like, maybe part of the organization was really into him coming back, and maybe this coaching staff or whatever wasn't that into him coming back, and there might be some division in the org. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that because they don't seem united? Are they more united than I'm thinking they are?
I think that Perch hit the nail on the head. His answer was actually perfect for the first part of the question. There is a lot of young players on the offensive side of the football. There's not a ton of, there's not the Marquise Pouncey, Ben Roethlisberger 15-year relationship or 14-year relationship, or there's not, the Heinz Ward, or, a guy that, you look at the weapons on the offense, Ben really doesn't have much of a relationship with the players because of the age difference and the amount of time, spent in Pittsburgh. Now, onto the coaching, I don't necessarily think that Mike Tomlin's subdued. I just think that is Mike Tomlin. And the one thing that doesn't sell in a locker room or with the media is being a phony. And the things that people really like about Mike Tomlin, cool, calm, collected, thoughtful, calculating, if he was to keep, undue amounts of praise on Ben, it would seem a little bit fake and artificial because he's really never been that way, in his time in Pittsburgh. What I will say is if they come out with a game plan similar to what they've done the last 4 weeks in Ben's last home game ever in Pittsburgh, I will forever call for the head of Mike Tomlin to be fired because Ben Roethlisberger has given as much to the Pittsburgh Steelers as any player, Ernie Stotner, Joe Green, Heinz Ward, James Harrison, Franco Harris. Ben Roethlisberger is on any Pittsburgh Steelers Mount Rushmore, for how long he did it and for how well he did it and for doing it injured and for really he never really threw anybody under the bus, even though he had plenty of opportunities. Bruce Arians has a nice Super Bowl ring to show Mike Tomlin and Rooney and Colbert and telling them, you sure I should have fucking retired? So.
Yeah, it just feels like, they gave, I think back to when they threw the shovel pass to Heinz Ward at the end of the game to get him his 1,000 catches or whatever it was. And it's like you're willing to do that for a guy like Heinz Ward, but you're not willing to let Ben go out on his own terms. In a way, yes, winning is the objective. Winning a championship should always be the first goal. But it's like if handing Ben the keys and saying go down swinging would really hurt their chances of winning, then I could say, okay, well, that's not a very good thing to do in this game because they're still alive for the division and everything else. But it doesn't. There's no evidence that handing the keys to Ben is a bad thing for winning, and yet they seem reluctant to let him really take his shot. And I kind of feel like some things are bigger in a way than a game for a team that is in 10th place in the conference. And yes, who has playoff hopes alive and everything else. But, in a way, I would much rather that they let Ben go down swinging and lose this game than I would them somehow play super close to the vest and eke out a win here, but not really put themselves in a position to go much further than that in a way. I mean, I'm always rooting for them to win. I want them to keep alive forever and ever. But it's like if they're not really going to play to the capabilities they have to play to, then I don't understand what it's all about. I do think I think they should give Ben the send-off of a lifetime in this game. Like I feel like the team should let Ben run out by himself onto the field, and the crowd should go absolutely apeshit. And when the game is over, they ought to put him up on their shoulders and carry him off the field while he waves goodbye. I mean, like that's the kind of send-off dude should get, and he should get it after a game where he looked like Ben Roethlisberger, at least in terms of what they were allowed him to do. That's my rant, Perch.
Yeah, I mean, he has been the least celebrated elite Hall of Fame quarterback of our lifetime. I mean, I've said that for years. You've said that for years. Just, he played in the shadow of Manning and Brady, who might be the two best ever to play, and they were in his same conference. And, you remember that streak of one of those three guys were in the Super Bowl, 10 out of 12 years. It was amazing. And he was always kind of the third guy in that list. But, you talk about, things that hamper winning football, letting Matt Canada design an offense and call the plays, that's going to hinder the offense. That's going to hinder your chances to win. I'd let Ben do whatever the hell he wanted the next 2 weeks. It's just where I stand on it.
PFC, I mean, one thing that disappointed me a little bit was I got this little, I got a nudge from our good friend Greek Steel about, hey, you have any interest in going to the game? And I don't think, for him, he's in Canada. I think if he came to the game, he won't be able to go out of his house or leave a hotel for 14 days or whatever it is. So I don't think he's really going to end up doing it. But I was like, all right, I'll look at some tickets, figure out about getting there. There are so many tickets available for this game, and they're at face value, right? It blows my mind. Like, I'm afraid it's not going to be what we want it to be, which is this packed house of people going crazy for Ben's last game. I mean, could the fans of Pittsburgh be so, not ready for this moment? Because I feel like it's a really big moment for the franchise. Could they let us down?
Here goes the dirty little secret about Pittsburgh season ticket holders. I think they say almost 40% of them don't live in the 412. So, I know two people that live 700 miles from Pittsburgh that are season ticket holders for the Steelers. I mean, just in my neighborhood, barely where I live. So, I mean, it'll be a Pittsburgh Steeler Nation thing. I wouldn't blame the city of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh season tickets, I mean, they are one of the rare things. You don't hear too many people giving them up. And they go through family to or generation to generation, So I will not blame the city of Pittsburgh for that. I expect a full stadium, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, I mean, they've beaten the Browns, they've beaten the Ravens, they've beaten the Titans, they've beaten the Bills. I mean, so that right there, that gives you just beating the three teams that you've already beaten. You could possibly get into the playoffs and win the first game. Now, I'm not going to hold my breath that they're going to do that. The defense has so many issues, and the offense is just inept. There's a lot of issues there, but could they catch lightning in bottle and get hot these last 2 weeks, make the playoffs and win around? Yes. Do I think they can have any chance at all to win the AFC? I would put it under 1% chance.
They're pros, so I expect them to be ready to play, and I don't always get that, but at the same time, I as a player, I mean, and you're watching film, you just realize that the game plan offensively just isn't going to work. And as a front seven player, I have defensive backs that are dropping coverage. As a defensive back, I have front seven players that are not getting to the quarterback. So the team lacks confidence. The best way I can describe the Pittsburgh Steelers would be a scary little boy. They're risk adverse. The players are risk adverse. The coaches seem to be risk adverse.
Talking maybe Ben's last game on Monday night. First, I was going to ask you, have you ever gone to a Steelers game where Ben Roethlisberger was the quarterback?
Oh, well, he's been there 18 years, and I go to a game a year, so I'd say about 18 games.
What is your best memory that you've had?
Well, I'll give you a different one. It was from training camp his rookie year, before he had done anything. And I waited around and got him to autograph a jersey, which I had bought and never worn at that point. And I've never done that before. I've never gone to get a player's jersey. I just knew. I knew that this was the guy who was going to win Super Bowls for us. And I got his autograph after I went to training camp like 2 or 3 days in a row, and he wasn't really hanging out, signing a lot of stuff afterwards, and I was able to get it. But I've got framed on my wall now. So that is right next to the – I don't know, did I ever tell the story about my Myron Cope autograph, terrible towel?
Wait, who's autograph?
Myron Cope. Yeah, so back in the day, they used to do Cope's Cabana after the game at Three River Stadium out in the parking lot. Anyway, so it's commercial. They're live broadcasting the radio show there, and people would go up and get things signed by Myron Cope. Well, as he's signing my towel, he takes out his flask of whiskey and starts chugging it, and the crowd goes crazy. He then spills the whiskey from Myron Cope's flask on my towel, which he signed, which I have framed, which still has a stain of Cope's whiskey on it to this day. That's the best piece of Steelers memorabilia that I own, and I own quite a bit.
How about you, FC? You have a Ben in-person memory?
I do. Playing the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, the tie game, 31-31. It would have been 30, but the Steelers tied Atlanta. And Atlanta, there had to be 60,000 Steeler fans at that game in Atlanta. And Ben came out, and he probably spent 2 hours in barricades just, with Steeler fans. And he actually was, really fucking just a cool dude. And on Steelers, as a senior in high school, he played on AstroTurf of South Stadium. And our head football coach borrowed practice shoes off of the Steelers because we didn't have anything for artificial turf. And I wore Hardy Nickerson's shoes. And all the Steelers actually showed up at the Woodland Hills Central Catholic game, Old South. The players showed up, and they actually cheered for Woodland Hills. The Steelers players who let their shoes be borrowed.
Shall we talk a little bit about this matchup with the Browns? Is there anything new under the sun in terms of the Browns?
Well, I think the biggest difference from the first matchup, Denzel Ward was not there the first time, and Owusu Koromora, the defensive rookie linebacker safety guy, that's two big players that they didn't have the first time around. So I think things are going to be a little bit tougher sledding on our offense. But the other side of the ball, I think they're pretty much the same. Did they have Chubb last time? I think they did have Chubb. He just came back for that game. So, I would expect it to be a low-scoring game.
They had Chubb. They didn't have the other running back,
Hunt, and I think Hunt is still missing practices, so he may be out again.
FC, anything in terms of this matchup that what do you think will be different about this game than the previous matchup?
The only thing that I can hope that is different is that the Steelers let Ben Roethlisberger go out on his shield with an aggressive offensive game plan. Let him, don't be afraid to let him be great in his last home game ever in Pittsburgh. And, whenever you face the Cleveland Browns offense in that strong outside zone run game, you have to be gap reliable. You have to do your job. Don't do anything more. Don't do anything less. Do your job. Shut down the run game.
Yeah, I mean, Perch, it feels like, as weird as this is to say, the Steelers, maybe their shot in this game is to try to limit what the Browns do in the red zone. Like, in other words, if you want to run the ball between the 20s, have at it. We're not going to let you, get big plays over the top. And when we get to the red zone, we're going to assume that we can pack things in and your quarterback's not going to be able to play against us. Do you feel like that will be a strategy that could work?
Man, they've got to stop the run. I mean, last time Cleveland really stopped the run, but they came out and threw a lot. That's, you would hope that they would do the same thing again. But, I think when they look back at the tape, they're going to look at it and say, why the hell did we not run more against Pittsburgh? So to me, you've got to commit to stopping the run. You can force Mayfield. If you stop the run and get Mayfield into predictable passing situations, I think our pass rush can get to him, and I think he can make mistakes, and he showed that all throughout his career. So to me, the whole game comes down to if the Steelers stop the run, win the game. If they don't, they probably won't.
I mean, FC, I posed earlier in the season, maybe the Steelers' best strategy would be to just let teams run, but not let them hit big plays down the field, because with running the football, they just can't score enough. When I said that, I didn't anticipate the Steelers would be quite as bad not stopping the run. Like, in other words, what it might look like if they just let teams run all over them. But I don't know. I'm still standing by this, that the Browns can't score enough points if all they can do is run the football. True or false?
False. And I don't think that in any time in the NFL, can you allow running the football and stopping the run are an attitude. And I can't think of the last great team or Super Bowl winner that wasn't either very good at running the ball or stopping the run. And most teams that win Super Bowls, even with all this passing, are pretty decent at both. I mean, people want to say Tom Brady. Tampa Bay had a very good run game. Tampa Bay had a good run game. Leonard Fournette, this year, Leonard Fournette's gone down. And Tampa didn't look very good against New Orleans. And you have to be able to stop the run. It's an attitude. This is still a violent game played by violent men. And just allowing teams to run the football is demoralizing. And a demoralized team is the 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers. That's what a demoralized team looks like. With talent. Because the Steelers are talented. They are talented enough to win the AFC North. I've said it from week one, and I'll say it, today. It's just the attitude. I really believe they need to fire everybody. And I've said that for a while. Yeah. You need a cleanse.
Yeah, it feels like that's the only way to really get people's attention is to bring in fresh blood that is super motivated to change things, not settle for the way we've always done it. So I do agree with that. Like, upholding the long standard of the Pittsburgh Steelers, yes, but how you achieve that goal, something different. Expectations are different in a way. I think when you do that. Perch, how much time and energy should the Steelers put into trying to run the ball against the Browns? Because previously, that's one of the ways they've really neutered Myles Garrett, more or less, taken away his big impact in the games, is by trying to run the ball at him a little bit. Considering that the Steelers running the ball are not very good at it, how much time and energy should they put into running the football in this game?
There's got to be some sort of semblance of balance with the offense. Just, not 50-50, but, just the threat of a run to mix it in on some downs. You and I talked before the podcast even started. Why don't you throw it on first down and run on second instead of being so predictable? And, you keep getting yourself, all right, hey, we're going to run for 1 yard on first down. Now we're at 2nd and 9. And they either try to run it again or they throw it short. And you keep getting put in these 3rd and longs. Just, mix it up and be a little bit more unpredictable. But yeah, they've got to mix some run game in and hope that they can, exploit a weakness and pop a couple runs throughout the game and pick up some first downs.
Yeah, FC, I don't know. How do you feel about this question? Should the Steelers offense focus on trying to run the football? And I'll give you a part B, which is, what would be the personnel you would like to see the Steelers use on offense? Because now they're sort of limited without Juju, without a speed guy, really. What would you like to see them doing in terms of personnel? And do you think they should be focused on running it?
I think the personnel package I would like to see the Steelers in the most would be 3 wide receivers, single back, single tight end. It's what Najee Harris is the most comfortable in. It's what Ben Roethlisberger is the most comfortable in. And I think it's the way that you get the most talented weapons on the field for what you have going this week. I love Pat Fairmouth. I do. I don't know if he's going to play this week. If he does, God bless him. I mean, God bless him. He's a Steeler. He's won that title in his first year. But you got to get the most talent on the field, and I think that gets the most talent on the field and satisfies your playmakers offensively the most.
Yeah, but who are the three wide receivers, for instance?
It's going to be Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and then we could argue on who the third one would be. I'd maybe rotate four different players. Sometimes it might be, Anthony Miller. Sometimes it might be Cody White. Sometimes it might be the kick returner from Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in an ideal world, that's for sure.
That third wide receiver can be a true weapon.
That's true.
You can run vertical routes. You can substitute. The Steelers aren't really worried about substituting. Allowing defensive substitutions.
No.
And you don't see too much substitutions of an inside or outside corner just from a wide receiver coming in and off the field. I mean, Denzel Ward got to run a vertical. If the Steelers just run him off the ball every flipping down, if he's running 50 yards, 60 yards every down, you wear on a defensive back. You wear on a defense that way as well.
Yeah. Follow-up question. Do you think J.C. Hassenauer gets the start, and will that actually be an improvement over Kendrick Green? I mean, a lot of people think that's a slam dunk.
I don't think it is, personally. I'm not a big fan of Hassenauer. I think he gives you less physically than Green does. I don't think that will be an upgrade. Yeah.
Perch, what's your take on the Steelers personnel to stop the run? Who would you like to see them using across the defensive front, the front seven?
Yeah, I guess the answer to that is who the hell's healthy. I think the Mondo experiment has failed. I think we could put that one to bed. Wormley, he does some things okay, but stopping the run's probably not the best of them. Loudermilk didn't look too bad, and Montravius Adams has had some, I'd say, spells of almost competence where he was, close to passable. I mean, that's the best praise I can give any of those guys, but that's who I would go with, I guess. But the thing they've got to do is, if Cleveland wants to run, 6 offensive linemen, we might need to put 4 D tackles in the game, and just, they're going to show that they're going to run it. Let's show we're going to stop the run.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the Steelers did a little bit of that 5-man front against Cleveland last year. Not earlier this year, but in last year's game, they kind of put a hat on their offensive linemen. And that seemed to be difficult for them to figure out how to deal with that. But that's when they had Tyson Alualu too. So, and Stephon Tuitt. So maybe they don't quite have the personnel to do that at this point. What do we think about James Washington at this point? Are you in favor of bringing him back at the right price? Are you in favor of absolutely letting him go, or does he fall somewhere in between?
I'm now at the position of letting him go. I think it's best for him, and it'll be best for the Steelers for him to go. The funny thing is, the other day, probably 2 days ago, I caught on Twitter James Washington's junior tape against the University of Pittsburgh, where he had 221 yards receiving in the first quarter of the game, and I was like, what happened to that guy?
Did they cut to Colbert in the stands, nodding his head?
Yeah.
Because he was there. He was there.
He was there scouting Mason Rudolph.
Yeah. He was actually throwing beautiful balls all over the field. It's nuts. I thought he was going to be for real. I didn't know if he would be great, but I thought he would have a far better career than he had. He could run. He was physical, very long arms, good catch radius. He caught the ball. But it just didn't work out for him here. And unfortunately, there's more and more top 100 picks that you're saying that about. Artie Burns just didn't work out here. Bush just didn't work out here. Terrell Emmons just didn't work out here.
Yeah. I mean, Perch, I hate to say this, make this comparison, but, really good kid, hard worker, has a lot of physical attributes that you think he can be able to win with in the NFL, was at times spectacular in his college career. We could be talking about Najee Harris. I mean, it's early for Harris, and he's running behind a line that doesn't, function the way it's supposed to function. But I mean, that's the fear, right? Is that he's, like James Washington, checks all the boxes, looks like he can play, and doesn't really pan out the way that you think he should.
But I thought you were going Lima Swede there for a second.
That too. Lima Swede at the great college highlight reel, right?
Well, I'll take the James Washington part first. Boy, I watched a lot of Oklahoma State. I watched them destroy Pitt. Would they play? Was it 2 years in a row? Or was it just one game? I thought it was 2 years in a row that they played Pitt and just murdered them.
They did.
But Washington has almost like a Heinz Ward type build, where he's about a 200-pound physical guy with long arms. Was a deep threat in college, but didn't have deep threat speed. He's more of a 4.5-ish kind of guy, and is not shifty enough to get open in the NFL. I think he's an outstanding depth guy. I'd love to have him back as our fourth receiver. The best thing for James Washington is to go somewhere else and see if he could find a place in the league that's going to, somebody's willing to give him a job as the top 2 or top 3 receiver. Now, who the hell wants to do that looking at his 4 years of tape? Probably nobody. So I think that he just needs a fresh start. He's going to leave Pittsburgh. But, if we have a receiver get injured and is out for a couple games, and you tell me James Washington's going to start, I'm pretty confident in that. I'm pretty comfortable in that guy, because he doesn't make the mistakes that these other knucklehead receivers that we have do. He's a professional. I think he's a try-hard guy, and he's talented, and he's just not a real number 1 or number 2 in the NFL, I don't think, but he's a great depth guy. So that's that. Najee, I think if you put Najee on about 20 other teams, he would be outstanding. This is just not one of them. I mean, but if you look, Najee's not fumbled all year. I mean, he's not really had any serious dings or injuries. I mentioned it last week that I think he's starting to see ghosts a little bit, where he's so used to getting the ball and being hit immediately, or having somebody in the hole of where he's going. It just, I think he's not trusting his reads anymore. I think that's bugged him a little bit. But to me, I mean, he's a good workhorse back. He's what you need in the NFL. I think, he hasn't had a great rookie season, but I think he's had a pretty good one. All things considered, he's been dealt the biggest shit sandwich that anybody could possibly get. And I don't think even, we said this last week, I don't think Derrick Henry can excel behind the Steelers O-line and with our game plan and with our play calls. Yeah,
and I mean, like I said, he's a rookie. Like, I'm not going to judge him what he's going to be in his college career. It's sort of like, it does scare me a little bit, though, because it's kind of like he's a character pick. You know what I mean? So it's like the character picks, sometimes they can work out brilliantly for you. And you're just like, man, I'm really glad that we picked that guy because he's such a good guy, like Cameron Hayward, being the example, for instance. Anyway, and maybe Loudermilk. I mean, FC, Perch touched on Loudermilk, but I feel like that's the positive story out of the draft class that was sort of unexpected. That Loudermilk was a guy that didn't stand out that much in college, but they saw something in him, and he looks like he's developed into a pretty good rotational player.
Wisconsin is a good place for the Steelers to find players, because they play their defensive linemen in true 5 technique. And Loudermilk was not fancy. You weren't going to confuse him with a superstar from the Big Ten, but he started 2.5 years. He's 6'7", 300 pounds, 290. He got some horrible advice from a strength and conditioning coach, where he dropped 21 pounds down to 278, went to the combine, didn't run well, didn't lift well, didn't jump well, didn't test well. Then you go look at that film, and for 2.5 years, he played the run well. And it is a skill set that NFL teams love. They love size, they love athleticism, and they love guys that can play the run. They don't want to pay too much for him, but they love to have him. And do I think he'll ever be Aaron Smith? No. Do I think he could be very serviceable, very good, stick around the NFL, Chris Hookish type with a completely different body type? Absolutely. Because he's a lunch pail guy that will take on blocks. He doesn't want glory. He just wants to win his matchup. And I like him. I like him a lot. I like this draft, as a whole. But there's not been that many drafts like this for the Steelers. I actually think that we're going to have winners on the offensive line. Even the punter, who's been horrible this year. I mean, his father was dying. I could understand him having some mental issues and mental breakdowns. I watched him punt at Georgia Tech, and gentlemen, he was ridiculous. And he wasn't the same guy. Now, maybe he never will be the same guy again, but if he is, he'll even be worth the 7th-round pick.
Sure.
The Steelers' problem is, and I cannot stress this enough, is coaching and message, because the Steelers have talent. These offensive linemen are close to being good. Our offensive line is a Juan Castillo away from being good.
Perch, I don't know what you do about the offensive line coaching, but it feels like it is crucial. It's the most important hire, maybe, other than a head coach, who sets the tone for his coordinators, because it feels like offensive line coordination is not just, teaching the individual players to be good, but teaching them how to be good together. And that feels, very coaching dependent. Is there any names, anybody on the horizon that people have been talking about in the Berg, or that about that might be a target for the Steelers to bring in to straighten things out, whether or not other coaching changes are made?
Maybe people being talked about in the Berg are already in the building. I hate to put it that way, but that's kind of is what it is. But, the other thing you're maybe not touching on there as well would be run game coordination. The run game sucks so much because the offensive line sucks so much. I mean, it kind of goes together. I'd be willing to hire somebody and make them assistant head coach, run game coordinator, and offensive line coach. Just give them some big title and throw a bunch of money at them. But that brings, another issue is the Steelers have pretty low pay for, offensive assistants and assistant coaches. So there's a lot of issues there. But to me, they've got to go outside the organization. They've got to hire the best person they could find, whether it's a former coach whose staff is let go, or or somebody. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've got to really go out and get the best guy they could find.
I'm sorry, FC. Who was it you said?
Juan Castillo. The Bears are going to fire their entire coaching staff, and he's going to be one of the guys that's going to go. And oh my God, would he be a miracle worker in Pittsburgh? He is a prick that is just technique driven and one beat of a drum driven, which means the offensive line strikes as one, they repel as one. So it's all about coordination, everything that the Steelers need. It's all about discipline.
Yeah, it just feels like that would be part of the message.
His experience as a run game coordinator, and I don't think you'd have to make him assistant head coach. I would offer that job to maybe somebody else. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
the one point that Perch made that is so incredibly important, we have to be willing to spend fucking money on coaches. You have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with a young team, right? I mean, because it's one thing if you have veterans that really know what they're doing. Maybe you don't need the same kind of, top line positional coaches, or maybe you do, because even like Tampa Bay, they got top line coaches, man. Even for a team that's very veteran laden.
And Lefty's going to be the next head coach of Jacksonville. Don't let no one can get that confused. Byron Leftwich, I can just about guarantee he's going to be the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yep, it seems like a fit for there, for sure. Although there are people on Tampa Bay podcasts right now that are talking about how happy they are going to be to see Leftwich go because he's holding Tom Brady back.
Sure.
They exist. I see them on Twitter. So I know they do. Perch, last word on this this matchup before we move on to the next segment. What do you got for me?
No, nothing we haven't covered. Just keep Myles Garrett off of Ben. Find a way to stop the Browns' running game, and let Ben bail you out in the fourth quarter like he has for 18 years.
That sums it up pretty well. Let's let Ben bail us out while we can, because we don't know how long that's going to last. All right, gentlemen. Listen, we'll come back and we'll give our predictions for what will happen in the Steelers-Browns game on Monday night. But before that, it's time for our illustrious pick segment, brought to us by.
Boom. The late, great John Madden. As Steeler fans, we were raised to hate the man, but it was impossible to do. He gave us the turducken, gave us the greatest video game of all time, and I can argue that he is the most important, vital sports person of the last 50 years. And you can say Michael Jordan, you can say Muhammad Ali, but I mean, it's in the game, and it's John Madden.
Here's a guy who loved big guys, and here's a guy who made the most of his career coaching, best win percentage for a coach in NFL history, at least in the modern era, and made a mark for himself in entertainment, and hats off to the late Mr. Madden, and bus drivers, long haul bus drivers everywhere have moment of silence today, because there's also a guy that didn't like to fly. I think he said, if I remember correctly, that the last time he was on an airplane was in the mid 70s or something. So John Madden. I would like to also sponsor officiating from the college ranks, because the crew who ended the Tennessee and Purdue game was also the same crew that got suspended for messing up the end of the Duke-Miami game a few years ago. And apparently those guys still have jobs. And so I must bring them on as sponsors of the podcast, at least for this week, in their honor for being bad enough to possibly get suspended twice. And Perch, here's a little something for you. The Steelers really only need 3 games to go their way in order to have a shot at the wild card. And they're not that ridiculous. The 3 games are Kansas City at Cincinnati, Miami at Tennessee, and Denver at the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay? So let me ask you this. Does it seem feasible that Kansas City, Tennessee would win those 2 games? Or do you think Miami will beat the Titans? Let's start with Miami and Tennessee.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we need Tennessee to win, right? Yeah,
correct.
Tennessee's 3.5 point or 4-point favorite. Chiefs on the road are a 5-point favorite, and we saw what they did us last week. And I think it'd be a big upset if either of those teams lost. I expect both to win pretty easy, which then would put everything, in the Steelers. They've still got a chance. If they get to 9 wins with 7 losses and a tie, they should be in the playoffs.
Yeah. The other one I forgot to mention is the Vegas Indianapolis. So basically, they have 2 paths. FC. If the Steelers win out and the Bengals lose out, the Steelers would be the division champions. So that's one path. It's not incredibly likely that Cincinnati would lose out, but they do play Kansas City this week, and then Cleveland, the team that they can't seem to beat in Week 18. So that's kind of a possibility. And then the other way is, these teams, the Dolphins, the Chargers, the Raiders have to lose at least 1 game. Do you think, which one of those paths do you think is more feasible, or do you think that neither are particularly feasible?
I think they're both feasible. The big thing is the Steelers have to win the next 2 games.
Yeah, that's as we always say, that's the least feasible part.
Sure. I expect Kansas City to beat Cincinnati. I also expect Tennessee to beat Miami. The Colts and Raiders. I mean, even without Carson Wentz, I don't think the Raiders can stop Jonathan Taylor. So I think the Colts probably would win that game, which may not be the best thing to hear, but If it comes down to Cleveland versus Cincinnati, oh, wow, that'll be hilarious. Especially if Cleveland knocks off Cincinnati and we beat Baltimore. I mean, if I was a Bengals fan, it would be the end of the world. There's people that are willing to take Joe Burrow over Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not ready to really go down that path yet or even consider that path. But there's people that are completely down that path saying that Joe Burrow's better than Patrick Mahomes. So, I guess
actually, this raises a good question, Perch. Who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL who are under the age of, let's say, 30? So we'll leave out Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers,
Herbert.
Yeah, I think Mahomes far and away to me is 1.
Right.
I might throw Herbert 2. And then you've got like Josh Allen. You've got Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be in that group. Who am I forgetting?
Baker Mayfield.
No, didn't forget him. Remember him?
Lamar Jackson?
No, definitely not. That's running back.
Carson Wentz, bounce it to me.
No.
Dak Prescott?
Yeah, I tell you what, Dak, I give him some credit. I think he's a good young quarterback.
Tua Tagovailoa?
Hell no.
Jalen Hurts?
No.
He's mediocre, but he's mediocre.
I mean, I guess hell,
now that we're talking about it, it might be Wentz might be up there. I mean, because there's not that many good young guys. How old's Deshaun Watson? Is he ever coming back next year?
Deshaun Watson and Derek Carr are going to be straggling that line.
Yeah, I think Deshaun Watson's a really good player. Just a matter of he gets through all the legal stuff and comes back and gets traded to Pittsburgh for a second rounder and all that good stuff.
I think he has about as much chance of playing in the NFL again as Stephon Tuitt. So
he'll be back next year.
Yeah, either one could be back next year or never play again. That's pretty much the same route. Yikes. Yeah, I mean, NFL teams have a way of overlooking a lot of bad things that players do, but that's still he's still got some wrangling to do to get out of that jam. I guess, in terms of the scariest thing to me when I look at it, it's, the Chargers, I think, are totally capable of winning out against Denver and the Raiders. And that's probably the thing that's going to be the nail in the Steelers' wild card hopes. If the Chargers win both games, I think it's almost impossible for the Steelers to get in other than as a division winner. Tell me this, FC, do you think the Chargers have a chance to lose either of these 2 games? I guess
they have a chance both games.
Yeah, Denver at home, and I think the Raiders, they're at the Raiders in the last week.
They have a chance of losing both these games. The Chargers, they were just decimated defensively. You got to remember, the Chargers lost to the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
So it's a week-to-week league, but no. I like Herbert, and they once again have run the wheels off their running back, and Mike Williams had some issues at Clemson with injuries and physicality. Keenan Allen isn't a young spring chicken anymore. Justin Guyton has shown he is what he is. Jared Cook, 67 years old.
And they lost Donald Parham, I guess, for I don't know.
Right.
As far as I know, he's not coming back anytime soon.
Ew.
So, that's a lot of wear and tear on that offense for sure. And the defense had trouble stopping the run when they were playing well. So,
right, whenever they had Bosa and the safety from Florida State. God, I'm getting old and forgetting names.
It gets worse, man, as time goes on. I don't know, Perch, what do you think? You think there's a chance that because sometimes you do these scenarios of like, here's what has to happen for the Steelers to get in. And I would say over the course of us doing this for 14 years, some of these scenarios have been wildly improbable. Like it would be tremendous odds. This where they sit right now doesn't seem to be that outrageous. I have a feeling it's going to be more likely the Steelers get in a position where they can win and be in week 18 and they lose, rather than not be in position by the time that game rolls around?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they win this week, they'll definitely still alive. I mean, if they lose, it's over. But the best path might be through the division. I mean, Cleveland put a whooping on Cincy earlier this year. I think we all expect the Chiefs to beat Cincinnati. Should the Bengals lose their last two and be out? I mean, it's very possible.
Yeah, I think the Browns won 41-10, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's like, I'm sure if you're the Bengals, you got to be thinking, like we don't really want to see them and have to win, So anyway, I don't know. FC, someone said to me earlier today, all the scenarios are nice and the Steelers might even make it in the playoffs, but it doesn't matter because Kansas City is rolling the rest of the conference when it comes to the postseason. Are you buying that?
Oh, if I'm a betting man, I'm buying that, but you need a ticket to the dance, and before Kansas City can beat us in the playoffs, we got to make the playoffs. So, no, I'm not buying it. I mean, we're one TJ Watt, or one Cameron Hayward pass rush from dropping Patrick Mahomes on his fucking head and him being out concussed, and they're running their backup quarter back on the field. And how much faith does that person have in the Kansas City Chiefs then?
Yeah, well, that's spoken like the John Madden game of send your quarterback to the hospital.
Right, and the ambulance comes on the field and runs over the players and backs over the players. Yes.
Just make sure you get out of the way if you're Steelers and the ambulance comes on the field. That's all I got to say. Perch, aren't you going to give me the Jim Mora?
Playoffs.
Yeah.
I'm counting on you.
I'd like to see them make the playoffs. I'd like to see Ben get another crack at it, but let's be realistic. Right. If this team did somehow go 9-7-1 and win the division and hoo-ha, whatever, they've got 0% chance of winning the Super Bowl. They've got 1% chance of winning the AFC. They've probably got a 10% chance of winning a game or two. So it's all just for shits and giggles at this point, giving us an excuse to have another podcast. But this team's so flawed and disgusting to watch and just disappointing. I don't know. I'm rah-rah, go Steelers, but come on.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're thinking seriously about, am I going to watch this team next year? Like, okay, I'm going to watch them, but I'm maybe not going to be so invested in it. Like, I feel like that's where about 80% of the fan base is right now.
We do an hour-and-a-half podcast every fucking week. We're invested.
Yeah. Well, the Mason Rudolph show coming soon to a theater near you. Like, I don't know, man. Then I'm not sure I get paid enough to do this show to watch Mason Rudolph intently for 3.5 hours a week. But that'll be the bridge to cross should we get there. In the meantime, gentlemen, I guess we have to do it. It's our 5-star matchup, as it always is. The Steelers, Pittsburgh Steelers, playing for a chance to give Mike Tomlin yet another non-losing season against the Cleveland Browns on a Monday night that may or may not. Signs point to it being Ben's last home game at Heinz Field. I'm going to ask you first, FC. Tell me what's going to happen in this game so I don't have to watch.
Yeah. Monday night, Steelers primetime, Ben's last home game. I think they do enough. I think they win 27-24. Chris Boswell, last second 53-yard field goal to win the game. I don't think they're going to take the reins off. If you're ever going to pay tribute to Ben Roethlisberger, it's let him be a man and let him go out as the gunslinging, Super Bowl champion winning, jet flying, Ric Flair type, woo, star that he is. And don't neuter him, and don't give him a candy-ass game plan. So I'll stick with 27-24 Pittsburgh Steelers over the Cleveland Browns.
How about you, Perch?
Yeah, I mean, if I was just being honest, I don't have much faith in the Steelers, so this team. There's really no reason they should win this game. other than, it's a home Monday night game and it's for the division and they're playing a team they've already beat. But the Steelers are so flawed. But for the record, I will never again, ever bet against a Ben Roethlisberger team. So I will pick contractually obligated to pick Ben to win every game for the rest of his career. So I'm going to go Steelers 20-17. And you can put that same score and prediction down for next week as well.
You're going to be in trouble if he never retires.
What's the worst can happen? I'll be wrong. That's not the first time I've been wrong on this podcast.
This is true. Same here. I have said about 3 times this week that I've given up trying to figure out the Pittsburgh Steelers, particularly of 2021. Like I feel like there was a time when I was pretty in touch with the Steelers and I could, adequately predict what was going to happen with them. I think a couple of years ago, even I picked almost every one of their games against the spread throughout the year. It was pretty good doing that. I'm lost, man. I have no idea what to think about this team because there have been some times when I just thought there's not really a chance for them to win this game. And then they come out and they look like gangbusters and then they tease you with a game where like that. And then they come back with a game where they just don't even seem like they can compete against a team that's not as good as the team that they beat. So I don't know. I would like to think that it's, sometimes because of injuries or things that are behind the scenes that we don't know about their preparation. Who knows about any of that stuff? I know I want this to be a brilliant send-off for Ben Roethlisberger because the guy that wears number 7 deserves a win and a big moment in this game. Not just a win. He deserves, some kind of payoff for all that he has given us and given his team in this organization. It's like it's players get paid and they get appreciated, and there's a lot of perks for being a star NFL quarterback. But somehow I just feel like Ben hasn't really gotten his just desserts, and I think he's aware of that too. And I think when he was sitting on that bench crying last year at the end of the playoff game, I don't think he envisioned himself going out that way because there were no fans there. There was nobody there for him to share that moment with. I feel like this is a really, really big deal for him. So, I don't really expect the Steelers win. I'm much like Perch here. I'm not going to pick against the guy because, he has proven to be as big as the moment, for his career. So, yeah, you're right, FC. Monday Night Football, Steelers at home should be a Pittsburgh win that we're talking about next week. That's kind of my last thought. But you guys want to give me one for the road? Perch, have at it.
No, that was going to be my final thought, too. Just, to me, these next 2 weeks are about appreciating Ben Roethlisberger's career, what he's meant to the organization, to people of my generation and FC's age as well, that, kind of grew up between the years of Bradshaw and Ben and had a lot of really good teams that just never had a good quarterback and can never get over that Super Bowl hump. And we're talking about one for the thumb for 25 years. Ben was he was the chosen one, man. He was the one that was our athlete for our generation, and I appreciate every second of his career. I've literally seen every snap of every preseason, regular season, and postseason game he's ever taken. So, yeah, these next 2 weeks are going to be tough, and I just hope that everybody even if he has 2 bad games, man, just put it aside and appreciate everything he's given. And the one thing that Ben said that he wants to be remembered for, which he absolutely should be remembered for, is never quitting. That guy never gave up. How many games were they down 20 points and he came roaring back? Or, the games I remember against the Eagles and the Ravens where he got sacked like 7-8 times. It looked like he was going to die in the field and kept picking himself up off the turf and kept coming back. He really personified what it meant to be a Steeler, and he did it from the quarterback position, which is pretty tough to do. So much appreciation to Ben. Grateful for his career. I hope all you degenerates out there and keyboard warriors keep your negative thoughts to yourself for a couple weeks. That's all.
FC, how about you?
Don't drink and drive this New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. It's a rookie day. Everybody's going to be out. Quickly on the Ben. Anybody that wants to learn about Ben Roethlisberger's career, I suggest going and looking at the 2004 Pittsburgh Steelers San Diego Chargers game, where it looks like Luis Castillo ends Ben's season. I thought that knee was done. Not only was it not done, Ben missed one start, came back, led probably the most improbable playoff run and Super Bowl to get that one for the thumb. And the last game would be the Marquise Pouncey. So the last game we played last year in the Cleveland game, where he's just sitting there crying, and watch him cry at the press conference. He loves Pittsburgh, and he gave you every fucking thing he had. And not every player in Pittsburgh can say that. And I'm with Perch with the keyboard warriors. You know, if you want to make fun of Ben and blah, 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 you know, cool. Good deal. You're an asshole, but that's fine. That's your prerogative. But just realize you're a douchebag, and the guy is everything you could want for an athlete.
I can't say it any better. You guys said it. Gentlemen, be safe for New Year's. And, man, I've got my fingers crossed. I got my terrible towel touched. Let's talk next week after
let's cheer for the Georgia Bulldogs, because my fucking wife is going to kill me if Michigan wins.
Okay, we'll keep you in our prayers, FC.
I appreciate it.
SteelperCh FC, everybody who watches the show. I am Wil Masisak, also known as Bradshaw DeBan and Accidental Zen on Twitter, saying, let's talk after a big Steelers victory next week. Go get them, Steelers.
Here we go.
Ben.
Here we go.
Steeler Fury.